I'd like to encourage you to visit Guns Etc. They're strong supporters of our president and the principles our country was founded upon. Guns Etc. is 10,200 square feet, and it's a firearm lover's paradise. And for all your online firearms needs, just click on gunsetcetera.com. And if you like my monologues, please subscribe to our channel. Thanks. Welcome back, March 3rd, 2020. Today is Super Tuesday. Y'all know that. It is, as I said, going to be a clarifying weekend. More clarifying starting tomorrow. I believe it could be the end of the Michael Bloomberg campaign. He's not polling high in California, and he's 10 points behind Joe Biden in Texas, who is himself behind Bernie Sanders. Meanwhile, the Democrats are at once losing it and coming to terms with the heart and soul of their party, which is socialism. I give you former DNC chairman, former CNN contributor, current Fox News contributor, and former Al Gore campaign manager, Donna Brazile, this morning. Listening to Ronna McDaniel of the RNC say about the same things I just said above, Donna Brazile said this on Fox News, and I quote, "I want to talk to my Republicans. Stay the hell out of our race. Stay the hell out of our race. I get sick and tired, Ed and Sandra, of listening to Republicans tell me and the Democrats about our process. First of all, they don't have a process. They're canceling primaries. They have winner take all. They don't have the kind of democracy that we see on the Democratic side. And for people to use Russian talking points to sow division among Americans, that is stupid. So, Ronna, go to hell." As Ed Henry tried to rescue her, she doubled down, saying, "No, go to hell." There's a lot here in this outburst. First, I never understood why Fox hired her. She's not smart. She's never said anything smart. Never, ever. She is, to me, literally the dumbest Democrat on television, and certainly Fox, at least since Alan Colmes. She was fired from CNN. CNN has had a practice of not hiring Fox News personalities, and there may be one or two exceptions, but I remember in the 90s and 2000s that was the rule at CNN. Why would Fox take CNN's retreads? Second, I'll add another thing. The DNC isn't even allowing Fox to air a debate, to host a Democratic Party debate. I don't know why Fox gives her the time of day. Second, I'll say it for the umpteenth time. I never again, though you and I will, want to hear about the vulgarity or tweeting of Donald Trump. There's little he said, if anything, that is tougher than what the Democrats have said about or to us. Finally, note the effort for the umpteenth time to silence us, conservatives and Republicans. It's just standard fare now, I suppose, where they tell us they actually just say it. They want us to shut up, or shut the hell up, as if we don't have a right to opine on the Democratic race. As if we're not all Americans with interests about and in both parties. Stay with me on this for just a moment. For all these goody two-shoes manqué, they like to say we shouldn't politicize things. We are Americans before we are Democrats, or we're Americans, we should be Americans before we're Republicans. They don't actually think that. It's baloney. They're telling us we have no interest and should say nothing about their party. Okay. New rule then. I like it. They don't get to talk about Republicans and conservatives anymore then, I guess, huh? How long do you think that'll last? It won't even start. This is close to akin to the left and racial industrialists saying non-blacks should not talk about affirmative action and men shouldn't or don't have a right to talk about abortion. To them, we actually are not all Americans. It's not just that we don't all have First Amendment rights, it's that only members of one body can speak about that body. I wonder if that means Barack Obama, whose mother was white, could only speak about affirmative action or race preferences half as much as, I don't know, let's say Ben Carson. Or maybe it means Bernie Sanders should speak less about abortion than, say, I don't know, Marsha Blackburn. You know, of course, that is not their rule. Their rule is only pro-choicers should speak about abortion and only pro-race preferentialists should speak about affirmative action, and on and on and on. This is not far removed from Joe Biden pleading for a time of more decency in our politics, while he has no problem and has never apologized for saying Mitt Romney, as the nominee for the Republican Party for the presidency, was going to put black people back in chains. I've been speaking a lot about our divided politics lately, but mostly because those who've divided our politics, divided us as a polity, ramped up the rhetoric in the first place, and yet are the first to complain about it now. And they are almost all exclusively, first and foremost, not only drawing first and the most blood, but Democrats and leftists. Nancy Pelosi called the president a racist on the floor of the House of Representatives. Tip O'Neill, remember, that great and decent Democrat of the 1970s and 80s, he called Newt Gingrich un-American. It's been this way a long time, and we just kind of accept it. Steve Hayward wrote this some months ago, outlining how long we have been taking it. When Barry Goldwater was nominated to the presidency in 1964 in San Francisco, Mayor John Shelley of San Francisco said Republicans, quote, had Mein Kampf as their political Bible, close quote. Columnist Drew Pearson, for example, wrote that, quote, the smell of fascism has been in the air at this convention, close quote. The Chicago Defender ran the headline, quote, GOP convention 1964 recalls Germany 1933, close quote. Following Newt Gingrich's landslide in 1994, Representative George Miller, D. California, said, it's a glorious day if you're a fascist. Representative Charlie Rankel, D. New York, on GOP budget cuts under Gingrich, quote, Hitler wasn't even talking about doing these things, close quote. Actually, we have to give this one to Rangel for accuracy, since it is correct that Hitler never did talk about cutting Medicare. Representative Major Owens, quote, these are people who are practicing genocide with a smile. They're worse than Hitler, close quote, worse than Hitler. That must be the equivalent of turning racism and fascism up to 11. I have a huge file of these, Steve writes. I'm omitting my very large roster of Reagan-Hitler quotes. What I don't have are any instances, not one, of a Washington Post or New York Times editorial calling out liberals for extreme or divisive rhetoric. That's a one-way ratchet, as we all know. Liberals are free to call Republicans any crazy thing they want, and even to suggest, as FDR did, that Republicans are un-American and ought to consider leaving the country. But a Republican ever talks back, we see liberals get a case of vapors. And we accept it. We accept it as just de rigueur. But of course Donald Trump must stop tweeting. There's a point that's not just about the heat, the extremism of the Democrats' rhetoric and the left, and it's exactly this. To write us out of the mainstream. They want to write us out of the mainstream, to make our party and movement be seen as irresponsible, not a legitimate part of the body politic, to marginalize us. Interesting word, that, marginalize. I first got hip to it in college when I was learning from left-wing activists and professors that minority groups felt marginalized, or the point of people's movements, be it the poor people's movements or any other, was to give voice and agency and so forth to marginalized groups. I grew up in a Democratic Party household, and I will tell you, this was all news to me. I grew up knowing full well the racism in our country's history. I grew up full well knowing about poor people. I read about them. I listened to their stories. I visited them. I worked with them. I did charitable work on their behalf and with them. But what the new left ensured, as I began to learn in college, was that the psycholinguistics of all this was you could marginalize people by use of language. You could make them or make them feel, a phrase I hate, less than. But I hope you realize the joke here, because it's a bad joke. There is no feeling of less than or marginalization of those who caterwaul about it the most. I give you poster children checking almost all the boxes of intersectionality. Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, others. They control the microphones. Their opponents are in fear of speaking up to or about them. Hell, they even seem to be immune from any kind of normal legal proceedings for obvious wrongdoing. As Dennis Prager put it, if you have a child with great GPAs and SATs who's white, and the neighbor has one that's a minority, both applying to a selective college, who's got the better chance? Now try it with a job application or a promotion. The point is not that equality has not been achieved in every institutional way. It's that it's become, yes, a phrase I do like, that you tellingly never hear anymore, reverse discrimination. And why is that a thing? Well, to the left, it isn't. thing because, again, discrimination is not what they care about. Discrimination against some races or genders or other immutable characteristics is what they care about. Just as it's not racism today that they care about sexual or actual discrimination. It's Republican racism and sexual discrimination they care about because they only believe in one party, not more. One raised consciousness, not more. One state, not individual rights. And so, yes, you bet. That's why I say with Bernie Sanders, the Democrats have finally melded their hands to show us socialism in every manner, from means to rhetoric to, yes, their own versions of the nomenclatura. So if I may borrow from the conclusion to one of Abraham Lincoln's greatest speeches, invoking an even older document, these gates of hell shall not prevail against us. And if you don't like that word, tell Donna Brazile or Fox News. I'm Seth Leibsohn. We'll be right back.